How's it going? My name is Jess and this is Reason. Today I'm joined by Reason's editor-at-large, Darren Grimes, and we'll be discussing the recent Jeremy Clarkson controversy. So Darren, do you think Jeremy Clarkson is this vile racist misogynist that the Twitter mob seems to depict him as?
No, honestly, I think this whole thing is a total farce, right? At a time when the nation is facing generation defining inflation, right? A cost of living crisis that none of us have seen before, or at least most of us haven't seen before, that are fortunate enough to have lived through relatively stable economic times. The NHS is collapsing, Jess. The healthcare professionals have turned around and said, don't do anything risky over the coming days because guess what? We can't treat you. That's serious stuff. The immigration crisis taking place, the invasion at our southern border, all of these issues are going on, and yet we're obsessed with talking about hurty words from Jeremy Clarkson in relation to Meghan Markle. I mean, I just find the whole thing totally farcical. It was all about this reference to the Game of Thrones, right? And there's this one scene in the Game of Thrones where the Sparrow, who's this kooky religious cultist, and the Sparrow directs Cersei, the Queen Cersei, to be stripped and sheared. Her hair is buzzed off, and then behind her there's a woman dressed in a nun's, the habit and all the rest of it, and she's ringing a bell and she's shouting shame, shame. And Jeremy Clarkson said, I want this to happen to Meghan Markle down the streets of Britain. Now, he wasn't being serious. I don't think Jeremy Clarkson was getting ready the shears, right, ready to go over, buzz over Meghan Markle's head. I think he was making a point, which is a little bit of self-awareness from Meghan Markle, a little bit of, actually, do you know what? The British people flocked to the streets. They lined the streets out of love and admiration for Prince Harry finding the one, right? Finding someone to marry. They flocked to the streets, actually saying, this is so lovely. We're right behind this couple. And she then, with Prince Harry, turns around to this nation and tries to tar us and our vote for Brexit as being some kind of small minded racist island that's not worth hell nor high water. It just smacks of ingratitude. So what I think Jeremy Clarkson was saying, actually, I would like her to walk up and down the streets of Britain in recompense to actually recognise the hurt and pain that she's caused, not Jeremy Clarkson, in the country at large.
I'm not gonna lie, this overreaction around what Jeremy Clarkson has said, you've seen people, MPs, call for him to resign. It seems like he's the one who the British public are casting shame at. And I think through this overreaction, we can see that Meghan Markle is somebody who is protected by the media and the British establishment. I think this just dispels this whole narrative that she is oppressed, that she is a victim. Do you think Meghan Markle is truly a victim of the British press after we've seen through this reaction?
It's quite clear that you're right, she's protected by the British press, right? The political and media class in saying they will jump on anything to endorse Meghan Markle's accusations of racism, right? To endorse her accusations of misogyny. Actually, there's nothing of the sort. As I say, the country was right behind Meghan Markle around the time of that wedding. It was only subsequent to that when, she was throwing these lavish baby showers, when she was basically making, I think, really big signs of ingratitude. And then, of course, mocking our monarch in that reality television show that she just did with Netflix. But I think actually you've raised quite an important point on the 65 MPs that have led by Caroline Noakes, by the way, who's supposed to be a Conservative Member of Parliament. She's about as Conservative as Jeremy Corbyn is. But I think actually the chairman of the Women and Equality Select Committee, which, as you know, Jess, waxes lyrical these days, not about women's rights, but actually about allowing men in female-only changing rooms and things like that through self-ID. So I won't take their howls of misogyny seriously, to be frank. But they didn't call on Jeremy Clarkson to resign, actually. They called on him. They called on the editor, even, of the Sun newspaper for definitive action. Now, you think definitive action? That sounds like the sort of thing that we've been calling for on the migrant crisis. That sounds like the sort of thing that we've been calling for on the economy. It sounds like the sort of thing that we've been calling for on a whole host of things that actually matter to we, the British people that pay the MPs' wages, that elect them. And they're just turning around to us and saying, oh, I'd much rather talk, frankly, about Jeremy Clarkson and about the fact that he's upset Meghan Markle, which has become the most complained about article ever that Ipso have ever encountered, which is just utterly bizarre. It shows to me, I think, if not a form of psychosis, it's a form of narcissism, because we frankly have way more important things to be talking about.
Do you think this exposes an overarching problem within the British establishment, within the British media? We've recently seen, for example, I think it was today or yesterday, that a woman around an abortion centre, she was caught praying. I know the crime of that. And she's been arrested for that. And now we're seeing through Jeremy Clarkson's defiance against Meghan Markle that there's this constant curb to crush freedom of speech. Do you think this is just another attempt at that, and do you think it will be even more successful?
I think actually you're right, and it all comes down to this word offended. Hurty feelings. I've got hurty feelings. You've hurt my feelings, therefore I need to ruin your life, right? Offense and speech and debate. I was just thinking about this before I spoke to you in the kitchen a moment ago, and I was thinking about why is it that I love speech and debate? Why is it that I actually love when people make me think about things and at a different perspective and actually start to process thoughts and reach conclusions on matters? And then I thought, well, actually, why am I asking myself this? Of course I like speech and debate. It's what's advanced society to get to the point where we're at now, where you, Jess, don't have to be a homemaker if you don't want to be. I, as a gay man, don't have to face persecution for roaming the streets. So many ways in which we've advanced as a society, and that's through having discussion and dialogue about things. But it smacks also of rank hypocrisy when we have the MPs coming out against someone like Jeremy Clarkson, who, let's be honest, right, he's a sort of stereotype of a white right-wing man. And that's why they loathe him, in my opinion. They didn't come after Jo Brand when she made that joke about the milkshaking of Nigel Farage, where she said, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid, right? So actively, you could argue that that was inciting violence in some way. I don't recall MPs rushing for the letter writing for her to be punished by her employer. So it's different for Jeremy Clarkson. And you ask yourself, why is that? And it strikes me that anything deemed to be offensive that is on the politically incorrect side of politics. So Jo Brand is on the politically correct side of politics because she's left wing. She's a left wing comedian. She didn't get these sort of tiresome, trite cliches on how we must do better and how enough is enough, as if Jeremy Clarkson had just called upon the whole of the British population, as far as women are concerned, to be enslaved into serfdom. It is disproportionate, it is unreasonable, and frankly unbecoming of our MPs to be so swivel-eyed that they would focus and put out these trite cliches like this from what is supposed to be a serious select committee. It beggars belief. It really, really does. And I think you're right. It comes down to an attack and assault on free speech. And it comes down to hurt feelings online mattering more than that right, that protection of free expression.